Hello everybody, it's Julia here from the Highly Sensitive Tarot, and I'm back today with a VR. So before I get started, I hope everybody's well and everybody's doing okay. I hope that March brings much better energy for everybody. So this hashtag is Idealized Self Decks, and this was started by Kim at Somatic Sorceress, and I've watched her video, and I've also seen Teresa's VR also from her channel Coffee and Tarot with Mama T. So I really enjoyed both, so I thought I would have a go. So there are 4 prompts, and the first 2 are showing some decks, and the second 2 are talking. I might turn the camera around onto my face when I'm talking, I might not, we'll see. So really the premise of this tag really is looking at, reflecting on the decks that we've bought in the past and why we bought them. Did we buy them for our aspirational self, who we wanted to be, or did we buy them for our real self? So this is sort of aspirations versus reality. So there needs to be a fair amount of self-awareness and self-reflection in a VR like this. So I had to look at my decks for quite a while really to really think about why I bought them and why I'm not using them actually, because most of the decks I've got here I'm not using. So anyway, I'm going to lump the first 2 prompts are idealized tarot decks that I thought were for me but were only for my idealized self and why. And then we've got oracle decks I thought were for me but they were only for my idealized self and why. And I'm going to kind of lump these 2 together because the decks that I've chosen are from the same creators, the oracle decks and the tarot decks. So I've got 4 different creators and several decks. Now the first one is the Aspirational Tarot by Stacia Barrington. This was one of the very first indie decks that I bought when I started my channel. And you know, and I've had my channel nearly 5 years now. And you know, I'm still not entirely sure if this is a knockoff or a genuine deck. I bought it from eBay. I was promised that it was a genuine deck. It's a full size deck, you know, it's not one of those little ones that you know for sure is a knockoff. But I think I've put the guidebook somewhere else as well. But do you know, for the life of me, I just don't know whether it was a knockoff or not. But anyway, when I first started my channel, I only had a handful of decks really, and I'd had those decks for a long time, and I had no real concept really of what I was aspiring to or what my taste in tarot decks were, you know, no idea at all. And this deck was being talked about by so many people, and I don't know, you know, I don't know why I bought it. It was not cheap. The deck has annoyed me ever since I've had it because it's horribly bowed. All of the cards don't sit down flat on the table. And if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you've probably never even seen me play with this deck, read with it. It's rarely ever come out in a VR. There's the odd card that I enjoy here, but for the most part, I just don't get it. So this was very definitely my first sort of aspirational deck purchase based on watching other people's excitement and other people talk about this. And obviously, you know, like you do when you start your channel. I mean, I really like that card. That's an amazing card, Judgment there. I really like that. I mean, you know, I get the cards, but they just don't really speak to me particularly. But yeah, you know what it's like when you first start your channel. You know, although you want to buy decks that you like, you're not going to buy a deck that you hate, but you're also looking to see what other people are using, and that influences your decisions a huge amount. And, you know, you want to fit in, you want people to watch your videos. And really, I think that's why I bought this deck. But like I said, and I know a lot of you love this deck and will go, oh, Julia, how can you? But it's how I feel. I would probably like to rehome this deck, but like I said, I don't know why I feel like I got a knockoff. Somebody's sold me something that's not genuine. I don't really know. But anyway, that is my first deck. Okay, and the second deck I've got here, and again, a lot of you will go, Julia, is the El Goliath Tarot deck. This is another one that well, I was convinced from watching other people's videos about this deck that I would enjoy it, because on the whole, I really like animals and nature-based decks. But I received this deck. Well, I bought it secondhand on eBay. It's definitely a genuine one. And I used it last year for the first time to do the Drop 'em 78 challenge. And it just did not speak to me at all. It left me feeling quite cold. There's the odd card in it that I really like, but there's too many cards in it that I don't like looking at the images, like this one, for instance. If I looked at that card long enough, I would sob. I would just be crying. I can't bear the thought of animals suffering, particularly horses. You know, the fact that all the crows are hovering around them, I just absolutely can't bear it. It's just, I don't like looking at it. And I fully appreciate that not every deck we have should make us smile and feel happy. You know, it's good to have cards and decks that challenge you somewhat, but I don't want to, you know, there's enough hardship in the world. You know, I go on Facebook occasionally to talk to my friends in other countries, and whenever I sort of have a little flick through Facebook, there's just all these awful little videos of animals suffering, animal cruelty, and I just, it makes me feel ill, to be honest. I just cannot bear it. So any deck that has a few of those sort of cards, I'm going to struggle with anyway. But I don't know what it is. I just don't get this deck, really. You know, some of the cards are nice to look at. I mean, this Six of Wands is lovely with the bees and the honeycomb and everything, but... And I can see kind of the victory in this card, that these bees have all worked really hard and they've made this beautiful place to bring up their young. And, you know, I kind of get it, but it just doesn't speak to me. And I very definitely bought this deck because of other people's opinions about it and how other people talked about it. I'm not really one particularly for this kind of colour palette either, although saying that, the Tarot of the Abyss is one of my favourite decks ever, so, the fact that it's got no colour in it is not going to completely put me off. I don't know. Like I said, I did the Dropham 78 with it, and I used it with another card, which I think is Curious Travels Tarot, which was a very cheap mass market, but that spoke to me far more than this one did. And comparing the two together, I found this deck cold. And so yeah, it was a big lesson to me, really, this one, about well, I think I've learnt lots of lessons over my time on TarotTube, really, about buying decks. But saying that, I still do buy decks based on other people's opinions. But I think these days I do a little bit more research. I'll watch several videos, and I don't just watch a video and go, oh, I want that, and buy it, so I think this one became a little bit of an obsession in my head, to try and find it for a good price somewhere that I was prepared to pay. And I'm not going to get rid of it, not just yet anyway, but I don't know whether it will actually last in my collection. I'm not sure. Okay, so for the next lot of decks, I've got some tarot and some oracle decks here, all by the same creator, and it is Travis McHenry. I've got Demon of the Day, Angel of the Day, Magicians, Martyrs and Madmen, and also the Hieronymus Bosch tarot. My son bought me this one quite a while ago, and he knows that I like this kind of artwork, and straight onto that picture there, look at that. And I do, this is not, as I said, my son bought me this deck, and I enjoy the artwork of this very much. It does make me smile. I think it's quite funny in large parts. But I don't like how Travis McHenry has changed the suits around, and how it's kind of composed, that we don't, that we have all these court cards, and yeah, it's, this is not a deck I would easily be able to read with. I know that Cara has on Lady Cara Tarot. I've seen her read with it, but I don't know. I've tried. I think I did a deck study when I first got it, and I tried. But this deck is going nowhere, because I do like it very much. And I think because I like this so much, even though I couldn't read with it, I still wanted to keep it in my collection. I use it as an oracle deck now and again, to be honest. It kind of prompted me to buy more of his decks, and I really thought that I would enjoy these, because they looked like they were quite useful, simple little cards. And I'm very interested in the occult. I subscribe to a lot of channels on YouTube that discuss issues around the occult. I've been interested in things like that forever, really. And I was a mental health nurse, so anything to do with sort of good and evil, and what makes people do the things that they do, kind of thing, is always very, very interesting to me. But I have never used these cards, really. To be honest, the whole angel thing, have never really vibed with that much. I suppose my philosophy and my practice around my spirituality could be considered pagan more than anything. I also like aspects of Buddhism. I don't get this kind of religious thing quite so much, although it's interesting to me. But these little cards, they just don't, they've not brought anything to my practice at all. I don't even really know what to say about them. I mean, some of the little messages on them are quite useful, I suppose, like how will people remember you? What have you created that will stand the test of time? Someone who longs for you will be in your thoughts, you'll also be in theirs, but it's okay to make mistakes sometimes. Friends can help you get back on track. You know, there's nothing here that is totally out there that, but they just, again, they just don't speak to me. And I think that that's what this is all about, really, isn't it? Is that often until you get a deck in your hands, you don't know whether it's going to speak to you or not. You don't know how it's going to feel, how it's going to read, how it will fit with other cards, and whether it's of any use to your practice, whether it has a place in your practice. And these decks just really don't speak to me. And again, it was like, because I liked one deck from a creator, it's been a lesson really to realise that I'm not going to like everything that they do. And that just because I have an interest in art or the occult or nature or animals or anything like that, doesn't mean to say that every single deck that comes out under that theme will be a deck that I will really like. Now this one may end up getting rehomed. These two are definitely being rehomed. I'm going to list these on eBay quite soon because I really don't want those. I'm going to keep the Hieronymus Bosch because I do like that very much. And I'm thinking about rehoming this deck just because, again, and I heard Teresa mention this actually when she was talking about, because she showed this deck, there is enough hardship in the world. At the moment, we seem to be, you can't escape the evil in the world, really. It's everywhere. It's all that we hear. The people that run the world, sometimes I wonder if they're actually even human beings. So maybe that's why I'm not enjoying this deck, really. I've never used it to read with. I expect I probably could. I've not sat and studied it. I've not really read the guidebook, so I know who some of the characters are in this deck, but not all of them. I know some of the stories, but not all of them. And to be honest, I don't really know what to do with it. Like Teresa said, it's kind of like life's too short, isn't it, to waste your time with something that you're not comfortable with, or that you just don't vibe with, that you're not clicking with. And I just think there's too many characters in this deck that there's just too many images in here that for me at the moment feel a little bit close to home about the reality of our world. And yeah, I just kind of I don't really want to look at it, if I'm honest. So yeah, and it's weird really, because you know, a lot of the stories, a lot of the characters here, a lot of this history is stuff that I've been interested in the past, but I wonder whether that's just sort of my taste in things evolving, you know. So I wouldn't say these weren't hugely aspirational, although at the time when, you know, Travis McHenry, a lot of his decks were very popular and talked about quite a lot. And I think it was, like I said, because I enjoy learning about the occult, and I liked his Hieronymus Bosch deck, I thought that I would like these, but I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining myself very well. But yeah, I think that that one is likely to get rehomed as well, quite possibly. It's just not my thing. Okay, and the last creator, and I have 3 of her decks here, is Kim Krantz. This was definitely an aspirational purchase. I love archetypes. I bought this deck before I bought her tarot deck and her other oracle deck because I'm absolutely obsessed with archetypes. I love them. You know, I'm very, very interested in Carl Jung, and you know, he coined the phrase archetypes, didn't he? And I've got a deck by Caroline Myss, her archetype deck, which I absolutely love, and I've actually studied that. I've worked with that with other people when I was a nurse, and I found it really, really helpful. So when I saw other people with this deck, I really thought that it was going to be fantastic for my practice, and I was going to really enjoy it. And I really have tried with this deck, actually. Some of my older videos, I used this deck a lot in readings and tried really hard with it, but these are not immediately recognizable archetypes, a lot of them for me. Not in the same way as Carl Jung talks about archetypes or Caroline Myss. I've got 3 or 4 archetype kind of decks, and like I said, I'm a really big fan. But a lot of these cards, I have to read the book. The artwork doesn't tell me anything really about the archetype or the card. No matter how long I sit and stare at them, they don't really tell me anything. And I enjoy the book, I think, more than the cards. But I like decks that I can at least have a good go at with my own intuition. You know, some of these cards obviously could, like the crone. You know, I'm aware of the archetypes around crone energy and maybe mirrors and rings and, you know, things like that. But there are others that I wouldn't have a chance, really. And there are some words that I didn't even know what they were until I looked them up, like this one. You know, the bardo, the threshold, you know, so you've got the shadow there. The comic, that's more a recognisable archetype, as is the healer. But yeah, I've thought about rehoming this deck many times. I've thought about rehoming this big deck and buying the mini one. But I don't think that I will. Because like I said, I really do like the book. And you never know, one of these days I might actually do a proper study of this deck. But it was definitely an aspirational purchase. Because Kim Krantz's decks were so popular at the time when I was looking at them. Everyone was talking about them. And everyone was really excited. And I really thought that they would work for me. I'm glad I only bought the little pocket editions of these 2 decks, that I didn't buy the big ones. Again, I've tried really hard with this. you know, I've spent time with it, I've edged it, but it just doesn't talk to me. I think I need much more going on in the cards than this. You know, like Teresa said, she's aware that she likes landscapes, and I do too. I like people, I like faces. I could read these cards, but I wouldn't do nearly as good a job with these as I would a deck that's got people in it. I don't mind animal decks, provided I can recognise some kind of human behaviour in them, if you like. Some of these cards are lovely. Some of them I like a lot. I think it's a clever deck. It's just not for me. And anyone who can read really well with it, I'm in complete admiration, really. So yeah, this was definitely a deck that I bought because, well, I just thought, I suppose I didn't think, did I? I just wanted. I saw it and I wanted it and I bought it and then I got it. And again, it's left me feeling a little bit cold. I would really, I think, have to use the guidebook quite a lot to get a good amount of information out of it, and that's just not what I want. And then we've got the pocket spirit animal, which I like more, I have to say. And again, you can see I've spent time with this deck. I edged it. I think I've probably got a fairly good knowledge of what keywords and archetypes you might come up with regarding certain animals. So I could use this as an oracle deck in a reading, and it would talk to me, I think, for the most part. But again, I think to really get the most out of it, I would need to use the guidebook. So yeah, I'm not going to rehome this deck, and probably I will not rehome any of Kim Krantz's decks, I don't think, because I have used them and I could see myself potentially using them again in the future. They're not a total no. I think out of what I've shown you, if I knew that my Sasarabito tarot was genuine, I would probably rehome that. And I'm going to rehome most of my Travis McHenry decks, I think, but probably not these, because I can see a place for them in my practice. But these were a lesson, really, you know, about listening to other people, and what other people works for other people doesn't necessarily work for yourself. So yeah. So we're now going to get on to the talky bit. So I think I shall turn the camera around and I'll talk to the camera about these bits. Okay, hello. So for the last two parts of this tag, prompt number 3 is, I've got some notes written down here. Excuse me. So prompt number 3 is your idealized self practice. So this is deck practices that I thought would work for me, but didn't. And I noticed that Kim and Teresa both said deck studies. Well, I do deck studies, but maybe how we're perceiving a deck study is different. I don't know. I don't do anything too sort of heavy, really. I suppose for me a deck study would be with a deck that is one that I feel that I need to get to know. So it won't be just like an RWS clone or something like that. It will be something I was just trying to think of a deck. Well, the Shimmering Veil, for instance, last month, it's something that's quite different to me. So I did a deck interview, which I did actually write down in my grimoire. I don't always do that, but I did for this one. And then I pulled 3 cards every day and looked in the guidebook every day for the entire month. And I didn't really show that on my channel, but that was what I did. And I also did one of the spreads from the book, and I can't remember whether I showed that on my channel or not. But for me, that is a deck study in a month. I'll spend a month where every day I'll spend a little bit of time with a deck, and every card that I pull, I will read the guidebook, just so that I really understand where the creator's coming from with that deck. So I do deck studies, and for me they're really helpful. The thing that I've discovered that is not helpful to me and that I don't enjoy is journaling. And I've gone back and forth with this for so long, because it's something that I've wanted to do, something that I've aspired to do, something that I've watched other people do. You know, some people have digital journals, some people have lovely notebooks. You know, people journal in all different ways. And I found, I mean, I've bought all sorts of journal books and notebooks and things over time. And I found that I can keep it up for, I don't know, a week or two. And then I'll miss a few days and I'll get annoyed with myself. And because I've done that, it starts to feel like a pressure. And I've realised I don't enjoy anything that feels like a pressure. You know, like people have said to me since I've retired that I could try and monetize my channel and try and read for money, you know, charge people for readings and things like that. But if I did that, I wouldn't enjoy it anymore. I know that I wouldn't. I enjoy my tarot time because it's a hobby, and I've got to a time in my life after working a stressful, difficult job, you know, as a mental health nurse for like nearly 30 years. I've got to the point where I don't want any stress, I don't want any pressure, I don't want any deadlines, I don't want to feel that I've got to do anything. So I know I just said that with my deck studies I'd pull 3 cards every day, but I'd literally pull those in the morning and sometimes not even look at them till the evening. It was not like I had to sit and be structured and write things down. So yeah, I've also found, I mean, I've got in a box in my bedroom, I've got old journals from years ago, and I sort of looked at those one day and realised that a lot of the time when I was journaling because I was sad, or I was going through challenging times or difficult times, and I don't want to look at those again. Do you know what I mean? I'm also not very sentimental about the past. It's not like I need a journal to look back on and reflect on, because I'm very much a person that what's done is done, the past is the past, and we're now in the present and we move on. You know, I remember from my mental health days that people who get quite preoccupied with the past often have a kind of melancholy or depressive aspect to themselves, whereas people that are always putting themselves in the future suffer with a lot of anxiety, which is me. I'm much more likely to project myself into the future than to look back. So I don't know. I know that journaling is, I mean, it's a very good way to kind of fix and cement things in your head if you're trying to learn things or understand things. You know, it can really help you to make sense of things, to write things down. You know, it's something I used to recommend to my clients to do all the time. And if that's what you enjoy doing, it's a brilliant thing to do. But you know, like last year, I had a go at the Drop 'em 78 challenge, which was from like, well, it was 78 days of journaling. And by the end of it, I felt like I never wanted to journal again in my life. So yeah, for me, I look at other people's journals and I'm just like, I don't know how you're doing that really, how you have the self-discipline and the motivation to do that day after day. So good on you if you do. Prompt number 4 is your idealized self conclusion. So this is, who is my idealized self? What have I learned from exploring decks and practices that turned out to be aspirational versus integral? So aspirational versus the reality of who you are. I don't know necessarily, other than I think the Kim Kranz decks particularly, and that Sasarabito deck, and probably the El Goliath. But I don't really think I own any other decks that I bought aspirationally because I wanted to be part of something or fit in or be cool. You know, I've heard Kim talking about she's not cool, bless her, and I'm not cool, you know, I never have been. And I've never really wanted to be. You know, when I was at school, I realised very quickly that I was kind of a nerdy girl, quiet, introverted, liked books, was very easily overwhelmed and overstimulated by other people. And although I didn't really understand what that all meant, I kind of knew that. And I think I very quickly grew out of wanting to be one of the in crowd or wanting to be cool. So I think my purchases that don't work out for me are often more about just me being impulsive, that I've watched somebody else enjoy something and without really thinking about what that deck would mean to me and how it would fit into my practice and how I'd enjoy it, I'd just buy it. And then I'd get it in my hands and think, it's not really for me. So I think I've always known my mind quite well in that way, but I can be impulsive. And my worst time for that is laying in bed in the evenings when I'm sort of watching YouTube and things, and it's like, oh, and then and then you Google it, or you go onto the Oneness Emporium or Amazon or wherever you buy your decks from. In Norfolk, actually, there's a shop called the holisticshop.co.uk, and I buy quite a lot of my decks from there because they're often a good price, and I like to support, you know, a business that's very local to me. So, but yeah, that's probably the most dangerous time for me, is when I'm laying in bed and, you know, I'm kind of relaxed and it's just too easy just to buy something, especially if it's a mass market deck, because, you know, I obviously think a bit more carefully about spending, I don't know, £50 plus on an indie deck. But yeah, and I think even the decks that I've bought mistakenly and I know I've got wrong, I've rehomed them fairly quickly. I was just looking through my notebook and I've rehomed, in the last 4 years, I've rehomed 23 decks, and I've got a pile on the floor of another half a dozen at least to go. So so yeah, I don't hang on to things that don't work for me. And I think if I was thinking about what my idealized self is, well, I love artwork, all different kinds of artwork, but particularly I like pre-Raphaelite art. I like Gustav Klimt. I like very nature-based art. I like hand-drawn, hand-painted art, quite classical art. Nothing particularly contemporary, really. And so I would aspire to having a really good collection of art decks. And I also like anything nature-based, so I'm always aspiring to buy really nice nature tarot decks or oracle decks, and I've got quite a lot actually already. And I often have to sort of say to myself, how many decks do you need of wildlife of the UK? It's like I've got quite a lot. I also very much like Rider-Waite-Smith decks. I'm not a Toth girl. I'm not a Marseille girl currently, although you never know in the future. So I'm not really swayed by a lot of those decks, but I can be easily swayed by really nice Rider-Waite-Smith type decks. And I think more than anything, what I've realised, something that was sort of aspirational really, was the collecting of decks, and just collecting generally. When I started my channel, I was mainly reading. I wasn't that aware of TarotTube, and that people really did collect decks, and that there was that many decks around. I didn't know what indie decks were. And I think I did definitely aspire to be a collector, like some of the bigger channels and some of the people that have got very big collections. But I think what I've realised is that while I'm enjoying my collection of decks, and I've got maybe around about 200, I guess. I think that's as many as I can sort of fit into this little room without spreading out into the rest of my home. I think I've discovered that I don't want a huge collection. I don't want lots and lots, because I won't be able to use them all, and I don't like that. I'm very much a person that the things in my home have a purpose and a role, and even if they're my pictures on the wall, paintings and artwork, aesthetically they please me, so they have a purpose and a role. Whereas if I had too many decks, I'd never get to look at them all, and that would niggle away at me, in my head. I wouldn't enjoy that. So I'm quite happy, I think, to have around about 200 decks, as some come in, some go out. But more than anything, what I aspire to is to be a great reader. I love to read my cards. Like Teresa said, she loves to read her cards, and I've been reading them for a long time, and I think that I'm reasonably good at it. But I watch other people, I'm subscribed to a few channels of people that read professionally and read for a living, and they just blow me away. And I've kind of realised that unless you're doing that every day, it's like a muscle, isn't it? Your intuition can be like a muscle. Unless you're doing that every day, you kind of lose your tarot vocabulary. You lose your intuition takes a little bit more time to sort of get prompted. So yeah, I really enjoy reading my cards more than collecting them, if you like. So that's another reason to not have too many decks. And since I've started my second channel, my reading channel, I'm getting through a lot of my decks a lot quicker, because I'm using like 4 or 5 decks a month just on my reading channel to read with every week. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. But anyway, I think that's probably enough, isn't it? I think we're up to about 45 minutes now. It's enough for me waffling. This was really interesting. This was a good tag. It was very thought-provoking, and yeah, I've enjoyed it. So thank you to Kim and to Teresa, who I've watched so far. So do say hello. I love to hear from everybody. I'm sending you all my love, and I'll see you all again soon.